In this video, I want to show you my process for changing the steering head bearing on the BMW R80 because at first, it didn't really work at all. For the outer races that sit inside the frame, there are definitely methods to get those out without a special tool. But I was very happy that I could use my new Kuko bearing puller set because that makes this job super easy. Now, in my opinion, the trickiest part of changing a steering head bearing is to get the inner race of the steering stem. So I was very happy when I found a tutorial on the Boxer 2 Valve channel that didn't require any special tools. But that didn't make it any easier because what we have to do is take the cage off, then get all the rolls out, and then take a Dremel and cut into the main part of the bearing so that it cracks and then we can lift it up. So that's the plan. Let's hope that it works out. After cutting as deep into the bearing as possible, the goal was to use a chisel to crack the bearing all the way open. I think that method doesn't work for me. It looked so much easier in the video, but I don't want to destroy anything. So what I'm going to do is I need to go to a special BMW shop anyways, because I can't disassemble the drive shaft without a special tool. I'm just going to take the triple clamp as well, and hopefully he has a bearing puller that pulls it off easily. So let me tell you how he actually did it, because it wasn't a puller that he had. He actually used a hydraulic press, and when I read up in the manual, that's actually what BMW suggests. So what he did was he used two pieces of wood, placed those in the hydraulic press, put the triple clamp on top, and then use the hydraulic press to press the steering stem out towards the bottom, and that also separated the bearing. So if you can find someone or a special shop who has a hydraulic press, then that is definitely the way to go, because this took literally less than 10 seconds. But you have to remember one thing before they actually press out the stem, and that is to punch in two corresponding marks, one on the stem, one on the triple clamp, because those two marks will help us to align the cutout for the lock now that we put everything back together. I already have the steering stem in the oven, so it heats up to 80 degrees Celsius, and the steering stem is in the freezer since yesterday. So that should help us to put the two pieces back together. But before I do that, I quickly wanted to tell you that if you're in the States, you can get a great kit from CycleWorks for the steering head bearing, which will make this job so much easier. It includes a puller for the outer race and the inner race, so that is amazing. And then also tools to put everything back together, and all of that for a relatively reasonable price. So I was jealous that I couldn't order that because I'm not in the States yet, but I designed and 3D printed a few tools myself, so hopefully those work and will help me to put everything back together. But first, let's put the stem back into the triple clamp. I think that did not really work. Maybe what I'm suspecting is that there's too much paint on here, so I need to take that off first. This goes back in the freezer. I'm going to take the paint off, and then that goes back in the oven. Really? That method unfortunately didn't work as expected. The guy at the workshop said that if I put the stem in the freezer and heat up the triple clamp, then the two pieces should just fall into each other. But apparently that didn't work. I'm missing a centimeter. So I guess we need to figure out a different solution. I might know something that could work. So I'm quickly going to 3D print something, and then let's see if that works. Okay, so while that's in the printer, let's prepare the other thing that we also need. I've got the part out of the printer. It's basically just a little ring that goes on top of the triple clamp, like so, to protect it right here, because the other part of the tool looks like this. I just welded on the washer, it just has to stay in place. That goes on here as well. Then we have a threaded rod, which goes through, and then a nut on this side, and also a washer and a nut on the other side. And then hopefully we can squeeze the steering stem into place. Let's see if that works. I don't feel like we're making progress. Not really. I think we're just bending the washer. I might add another one. All right, 2 more millimeters. Oh, come on. There we go. Nice, there we go. Okay, that's it. Wow, crazy. That is crazy. Now I have 3 washers on each side and the plastic ring, and I hope that that actually held up. But I think, yes, that would be very impressive. Not a single scratch. Now I can go ahead and reinstall the bearings, and the first one that I'm going to install is the inner race that goes on the stem, and for that I 3D printed a few parts that hopefully help me to get this on here easily. We first have this cup that goes on the stem. Next we have the inner race that I need to press on here, and for that I 3D printed a few different spaces and parts. This one is the first one, which has a little raised edge so that you don't press on the outer cage of the bearing, but on the inside shell where it's actually solid. And this is the next piece that goes on there, and that has a hole for a threaded rod. So we're basically using the same technique like before. So that's the setup. And then once this is pressed a little bit further down, I have multiple spaces that I can add so that we can actually press this all the way down. But before I press the bearing on there, I'm actually gonna grease it. And for that, I'm gonna use LM47 from Liqui Moly. That's the same grease I use on the swing arm bearings. And that is good for these types of bearings where it's no rotation, but just like going back and forth, because if you use wheel bearing grease for these, it wouldn't get up to the temperature that it needs to properly function. So this is perfect for this application. And how you pack a bearing is you put quite a lot of grease in the palm of your hand, and then you work it in from the bottom of the bearing. And you know that you have enough grease in there when you see it come out through the rolls at the top. All right, let's see if that works out. That is actually working quite well. Okay, that was easy. So now I just need to deal with the last bit. Nice, all right. That's the bottom part installed. So now we can move on and do the frame and install the outer races. For that, I also 3D printed 2 solid pieces that have the perfect shape to fit inside the outer races. So one goes at the top, the other one goes at the bottom, and then I'm gonna use the same technique basically with the threaded rod, and hopefully I can just push the outer races into the frame. The top one goes in very well, but the bottom one is a little off center basically. Okay, that should be enough of a cross correction. It might make sense to put the outer races in the freezer just to get a little bit of an advantage. The bottom one is all the way in, there's no gap right here, but the top one is missing about 1 millimeter or so. I don't understand why the tool doesn't get it all the way in, but since it doesn't, I'm gonna use the steel plate and make basically a washer that I can put onto the outer race and then hopefully push it in with that. I've got the disc done. It fits perfectly on here. So hopefully with that, I can now get it to sit flush in the frame. For the other side, I just drilled a hole in a 4mm steel plate. So that goes on the bottom. I don't understand why it doesn't want to go in. Oh, no. Look at that, the bottom plate is bending. That is crazy. And the top isn't moving at all. I mean, if I can't get it in like this, then it's probably not gonna change while riding. And even if it does, you can always just reset the steering head bearing plate. So I think there's not much that can happen. I mean, it's literally 1 millimeter that's missing. So I'm gonna take this out, leave it like that, and we can install the steering stem, put the top bearing on, and then that's done. I definitely encountered more problems during this process than I anticipated, but I'm happy that it worked out in the end. And I'm also happy that I have the 3D printer because it's definitely working overtime these days. If you want to get the STL files for the tools that I used, I'm going to link them down below so you can download them and use them for yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to watch another one, then check out this one right here. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I see you in the next one.